I'd like to welcome you to this meeting this evening. My name is Dennis Wright, and I am Superintendent of Student Achievement with the Thames Valley District School Board, and I have responsibilities for schools in Tillsonburg. Also in attendance today are Jeff Vogt, Superintendent of Facility Services and Capital Planning, and Lynn Griffith-Jones, Superintendent of Human Resources. Joining us this evening are Ben Puzanoff and Christopher Harris from our planning team. Welcome to everyone on the call, and thank you for volunteering to represent your schools on the Attendance Area Review Committee as part of this important process. We are here today to present an initial attendance area review report for Tillsonburg. The report contemplates potential attendance boundary changes. This meeting is the first step in the public consultation process for this review, and it is intended to provide school communities with information regarding what is being considered and how to provide the board with feedback, comments, and suggestions. There is an agenda on the screen in front of you where we will provide some background and then an overview of attendance area review processes, procedures, and documents. We will then have a review of roles and responsibilities of the ARC members, a presentation of initial attendance area review report, followed by questions and answers and some closing remarks. We will be monitoring the chat box during the discussion today. As some of the questions may be answered through the course of the presentation, we'll address the questions during the chat portion, the Q&A portion of the meeting. We'll also encourage you to ask questions and seek clarification verbally during that portion of the agenda. I will now pass the presentation over to Ben to provide an overview of the attendance area review process.
Thank you, Superintendent Wright. Good evening, everyone. Before outlining the proposed boundary changes under consideration, we're going to start by providing an overview of this attendance area review process and the role of attendance area review committee members. An attendance area review is a process by which Thames Valley changes boundaries to optimize enrollment and balance attendance across specific geographic areas. This is a process that is generally needed because of growing or declining enrollment and is done in order to ensure that optimal learning environments continue to be offered to all of our students. Thames Valley has a procedure for attendance area reviews, and this is available through our attendance area review website, with the URL being tvdsb.ca/OSAAR as shown on the screen. This website has many other resources, including a Q&A page and maps to show proposed boundary changes for each school. Prior to considering an attendance area review, the Board of Trustees receives what's known as an initial attendance area review report from administration that details current and potential attendance areas, current enrollment and accommodations, enrollment projections for the area, current and proposed residential development and community trends, as well as a potential timeline for implementation of any boundary changes. If trustees initiate the attendance area review process, formal public consultation is then undertaken through the formation of an attendance area review committee and school-level subcommittees whose feedback and input is considered by trustees through the decision-making process. The initial attendance area review report for this review was presented to trustees in June of last year. Administration was then asked to proceed with obtaining public feedback. Earlier this fall, volunteers to sit on this attendance area review committee were recruited with the help of principals of schools involved in the review. We'd like to thank you all again for volunteering to help and lead this important process. Following this evening's attendance area review committee meeting, attendance area review committee members for each school will be asked to host school-level meetings to obtain feedback from each school community regarding the boundary change options under consideration. The attendance area review committee members of each school subcommittee will need to designate both a chair as well as a secretary for their school-level meetings in order to help manage the discussion and to record feedback. Following the receipt of public feedback from the school communities, administration will then review the comments provided and prepare what's known as a final attendance area review report. Our goal through the public consultation process is to strengthen the options under consideration. As part of the attendance area review process, members of the public are also provided with the opportunity to make delegations to the Board of Trustees regarding that final report and its recommendations. This is then followed by a decision of the Board of Trustees at a subsequent board meeting. Once a decision is made, administration then works to implement that decision in accordance with the timelines as stipulated by trustees. This slide provides an overview of the timeline for this particular review. Following this evening's Attendance Area Review Committee meeting, it's expected that the public school-level Attendance Area Review Committee meetings to obtain feedback will be held in November through January. In accordance with the procedure, there are a number of important dates specifically related to the public consultation portion of this process. December 16th is the deadline for subcommittees to request any additional information that their school communities may require to supplement the information contained in this initial attendance area review report. This information would be intended to assist school communities with evaluating the options under consideration. Administration will be distributing any additional material that's requested to all school subcommittees involved in the review. January 9th is the latest date on which school-level subcommittees may be held. And then finally, January 23rd is the deadline for subcommittees to submit reports on their school community's input. Administration will be reviewing the public feedback received through the school community reports and then assemble that final attendance area review report for trustees' consideration, again, with the goal to improve upon the options under consideration. Presentation of that final report, public delegations, and the trustee decision are expected to occur in March and April, with implementation of any approved changes planned for September of 2026. As mentioned, the Attendance Area Review Committee is made up of volunteers from each school that is involved in the attendance area review process, including parents and caregivers, chair of the school council, and the chair of the Home and School Association. Attendance Area Review Committee members are vital to the success of the attendance area review process and are critical for obtaining feedback from school communities regarding the boundary change options under consideration. In addition to running the respective school-level subcommittee meetings, Attendance Area Review Committee members are responsible for producing a subcommittee report that documents the public feedback from each school community. Following this meeting this evening, Thames Valley Administration will be providing Attendance Area Review Committee members with template documents in order to assist subcommittees with running their meetings, including agenda and minute-taking documents, as well as a subcommittee report template. This presentation deck that you'll see this evening will also be provided to subcommittees for inclusion in each respective presentation to the school communities. Subcommittees are welcome to supplement this presentation with any additional material that you may see fit. Thames Valley staff will then act as a resource following the meetings if any questions arise or if any additional information is required by the school communities in order to evaluate the potential changes under consideration and to then produce that subcommittee report. Christopher will now provide an overview of the potential boundary changes being explored as part of this attendance area review process.
Thank you, and good evening. Tillsonburg is growing, with the majority of new developments concentrated in specific attendance areas, and growth in general will continue to not be evenly distributed across all three schools, with Annandale continuing to be underutilized, while Southridge and Westfield expected to remain well above capacity. The goals of this review are as follows: manage current and projected enrollment in order to reduce reliance on portables and continue offering students exceptional learning environments, reduce reliance on school bus transportation and overall empty pupil places, and better position TVDSB to pursue capital funding from the Ministry of Education to continue supporting growth of the community through the expansion of school spaces. Now, this table illustrates the current and projected enrollment, as well as facility utilization under the status quo for all three schools in this review. Our projections are based on a number of factors that include board registry data, historical enrollment trends, grade retention rates, and residential development applications. Incorporating all factors, we are able to project by school, by grade enrollment numbers for multiple years into the future. Taking a look at the table, we use 2023 enrollment numbers and 2026 as the implementation year for these proposed changes, and 2031 as 5 years after implementation. From the table, we can observe that Southridge and Westfield are both overutilized, with numbers projected to reach 185% and 120% utilization in 2031, while Annandale is projected to increase to 84%. We are forecasting enrollment to increase at both Southbridge and Westfield based on the distribution of residential development. As shown on the screen, most of the development is located within those two attendance areas. While there is development within Annandale, the Annandale boundary is not to the same extent. Now, up on the screen is a visual representation of the projected enrollment for 2026. Both Westfield and Southbridge are represented in red with utilization rates above 110%. Both schools are projected to experience enrollment pressures above their capacities as new students will begin to substantiate from development. Annandale, represented in green, is projected to continue to remain underutilized with a number of pupil places available. The potential boundary changes that will be presented in the following slides will explain how to best accommodate future enrollment from this area and reduce the number of empty pupil places we currently have. While these interventions are designed to balance facility utilization in specific geographic areas, each proposed boundary adjustment considers the broader impacts on the community. For example, boundaries have been designed to follow major roads and features like parks and railways wherever possible. Attention was also paid to modes of transportation, preferring boundary adjustments that reduce reliance on school bus transportation. Option 1 proposes to reassign 3 portions of the Southbridge attendance boundary to Annandale. Area A1, where the clicker is in red, located just off of North Street East for a total of 65 students. Area A2, north of North Street East for a total of 17 students. And Area A3, located between Cornell and Mill Road for a total of 29 students. If these changes were to be implemented, we would expect a decrease in portables at Southbridge from the projected status quo of 14 to 9, with the number of students reaching 427 in 2026 and 618 in 2031. By proposing to reassign a portion of its boundary to Annandale, we would increase enrollment to 561 students in 2026 and 607 in 2031. Option 2 builds off of Option 1 with the addition of a portion of the Westfield boundary labeled B1. This portion is located south of Concession Street West and has a total of approximately 86 students. With the addition of the Westfield attendance area to Annandale, we are projecting the utilization rate to reach 122% by 2031, with 6 portables needed to manage the influx of students. Westfield would decrease to just over capacity to 103% in comparison to the status quo, where it would reach approximately 120%. Now, up on the screen is a comparison of all 3 scenarios, starting with the status quo, where everything is left the same. Option 1, where we designate a portion of Southbridge to Annandale. And Option 2, where we propose to assign 3 portions of the Southbridge boundary and 1 portion of the Westfield attendance area to Annandale. I will now turn the presentation over to Superintendent Wright to facilitate the Q&A portion of this evening's agenda. Thank you.
Okay, folks, now that you've received our preliminary information, we're looking to answer any questions that people may have. You can either raise your hand and I can acknowledge you to speak through the microphone, or please feel free to put any questions into the chat and then we'll direct them to the appropriate staff to have them answered properly. I know some of you are in groups, so if you need to take a moment to discuss it. Any questions or concerns that you'd like to raise at this point? Please feel to either raise your hand or put it in the chat. I read it out and then get the answer for you. Okay, we've got our first question. When I first saw these options, I thought that option 2 seemed to just move the problem from Westfield to Annandale. Can you please speak to that, Ben? Option 2?
Thank you very much for the question. So in developing these options for consideration, we did want to provide some choice for folks as to where future development should be concentrated, and hence there are options to accommodate it largely at Westfield or Annandale. We certainly welcome community feedback and certainly a preference regarding which school is the preferred destination for new development. Hope that's helpful.
Chris, can you just speak to the for the utilization of Annandale if option number 2 were selected?
Yeah, so if option number 2 were to be selected, the utilization at Annandale would reach 114% in the year of implementation, 2026, and increase to about 122% in 2031. So in option 2, it would be proposed to reassign portions of both Southbridge and Westfield to Annandale. Thank you.
And again, I remind folks that the options are here for you to consider and to provide feedback on through the process. The board's really just crunching the numbers and giving you options to consider, provide us feedback through the approved formats. And so we're just really trying to present this to you for consideration at this point. Question number 2 is there are currently a number of rural students that are bused to Westfield that have to drive past Southbridge. Is there any option that would address this?
Thank you very much for that question. So the options that have been developed are in the report and presentation. With that being said, we would certainly welcome additional input and options from the school communities. So certainly if that is something that you would like included in your school community report, we'd encourage you to do so. Thanks.
Right, so just encouraging any creative solutions like that we may have potentially not been able to see from the geography, or maybe we've considered and put aside for now. Any of those things can come through your school level reports for consideration. Any further questions? Next question in the chat is there a way to phase the reassignment in slowly for people new to the area rather than to switch for current students?
Thank you for that question. I think you're referring to what's known as a legacy agreement option for current students to remain at their designated school. Certainly that is something that can be included in your school community's report, so we'd encourage you to provide comments around that when you submit that report for consideration. Thank you.
And Matt, I see your hand is up. Would you like to ask your question?
So with these boundaries, there are a few that run along a road and bisect it. So in the case where there are houses on both sides of the road, how does that grouping work? Does everyone on that road go to the new assignment, or half?
Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you for the question. So I'll just speak to each option. So for area A1 proposed to be going to Annandale, both sides of North Street would be reassigned to Annandale. Area A2, students north of North Street. So all the students north of North Street would be going to Annandale. The students who are south of Annandale, south of North Street are currently going to Annandale. And area B1 going to Westfield, Westfield to Annandale. Broadway, the students who live east of Broadway are included into that portion of boundary being, proposed to be designated to Annandale. And almost forgot area B3. So students who live on the east side, the south side of Cornell Road, they would be designated to, proposed to be designated to go to Annandale from Southridge. So the students north of Cornell Road, they would remain at Southridge.
Thanks, Christopher. And just to add
And
on,
sorry, just to clarify, you skipped a road in there between North Street and Cornell is Kellett. I realize the road changes name, it's very confusing. Is it the same as Cornell and that everyone on the north
Yeah,
side
so-
is continuing to go to Southridge?
So yeah, it'd be the same as Cornell, and Kellett would be the same as Cornell. Also, on our website, we do have a tool where you'd be able to type in your address, and it'll let you know if you're within the boundary or not.
Okay, I'm looking at the website right now, I don't see that.
We'll do our best to direct you to that. It is up and running as we speak. It's just a little bit of navigation, I think. While we search for that, we'll move on to the next question from Rebecca. So do these numbers include future homes being erected? The new subdivision north side of North Street still has a considerable amount of homes being built, as there are all across and around Tillsonburg. So Ben, can you just speak to the projections and the builds?
thank you very much for the question. So our team works very closely with Oxford County as well as town staff in order to make sure that projections do account for new residential growth. So the options you do see before you do include those residential developments. Thank you.
And then Karen's got a question about bus routes. Or do we have bus routes maps available? She knows her bus route, but is having a hard time visualizing the others.
Thank you for the question. So exact bus routes have not been planned. So we have consulted with Student Transportation Services. Christopher, did you want to speak to the number of buses that would be either reduced or I guess added as a result of the recommendations, please?
Yep. For option one, the number of buses needed would remain the same. So for option two, there would be a reduction of one bus.
So just looking at that, Karen, within the walking distance, et cetera, there are more students within the walking distance on option two, and that eliminates one full bus. But again, depending on the options that are considered and adopted by the Board of Trustees, obviously, at that point, we would need to recalculate all the bus routes and determine who's eligible for transportation and who is not. Matt, coming back to you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering who is accountable for calling the actual subcommittee meetings and chairing those subcommittee meetings.
Thank you for the question. So the meetings will be organized in consultation with your school principal. And then what would happen is the subcommittee members for each school would designate both a chair and secretary. Essentially, we would be providing support in terms of notifying members of each school community of the meeting. So we would send out messages via school messenger. And then there'd be an opportunity for folks to record the meeting in order to make sure that those who aren't able to attend the night of are able to then watch the meeting after the fact and provide feedback to their attendance area review committee members that can then be included in the final report that's produced by each subcommittee.
Okay, so just pausing for a moment to provide opportunity for any additional questions. Matt?
Yeah, again with subcommittees, is there any flexibility in these deadlines? I mean, we're being asked to do a considerable amount of effort over the holiday season. So I'm just wondering if push comes to shove, can any of these deadlines be extended?
Thank you for the question. So the deadlines were extended to account for the holidays. However, if committees are having difficulties in setting up meetings with school communities, we would certainly be flexible. So happy to sort of have a conversation about that if the need arises. Thanks.
Certainly not trying to rush anybody, Matt. We want to get this right. So if that is what arises in your circumstance or for anybody else, please advocate yourself or through your school principal, and we can have a discussion about it here as a team. We don't want to bring anything forward prematurely. We certainly would want to make sure that everybody has their say and an opportunity to provide input into the suggested options or any other creative options that may come up during your deliberations.
Appreciate the flexibility.
Yeah, no worries. Another question, is Springford still zoned in those options as remaining with Southridge?
Thank you for the question. So Springford would remain at Southridge in these options that we have completed.
Yep, so in both options that we've presented, Springford is still remaining with Southridge, but again, open to any creative suggestions or ideas that the group may have, and I'll just, Ben's got an additional comment.
Thanks, Dennis. Just circling back to the question regarding the maps. So on tvdsb.ca/OSAAR, under additional details, there is a drop-down menu with the heading Maps of Proposed Boundary Changes, and then there's interactive maps under those options. So I hope that's helpful for folks. And if there's any questions, once you have a chance to review those, please do reach out. Thanks.
The map that you can see online, does it show you how many students are within those certain boundaries? And I'm not talking about the ones that you're proposing to change, but if we're looking at it to try and see if there's a different way of doing it, is there a way to find out how many students are in the other areas? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's clear. Just give us a second.
Thank you for that question. If that information is needed, we can certainly take that back and produce what's known as a student distribution map. The only thing that I would say is we do aggregate numbers to protect the privacy of individual students. So that area, or that map rather, would be sort of a larger area map showing pockets of students. So yeah, we can definitely take that back and circulate that to all school subcommittees. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so if you have a question that's that specific, you can certainly email that to the team, and we'll do our best to have a look and answer that question to the best of our ability. And if the answer applies to everybody, then we'll certainly post it on the website as well. Additional questions of clarification? Matt?
Are there plans to hire additional teachers for the schools to get more students?
Matt, so that process is an annual process that occurs. It's purely driven by student enrollment. So whenever enrollment shifts within a school, Human Resources Department analyzes the numbers. You may be aware that there are collective agreement limits to class sizes, and whenever we get within those, we do analyze those and add additional staff. So it really just depends on the outcome of this, but certainly given what we're experiencing now, we've been adding teachers to each school over the past couple of years, and we'll probably continue to do so as we see continued growth in the Tillsonburg area. But once we have a landing to this particular situation, we need to step back, do some analysis, and then figure out what the balance of staffing will look like. And it is very much just driven by student enrollment.
was going to say that's probably why the implementation is likely not going to be until September 2026 at the earliest. I do have a question. I know that we have heard rumors about there being a school built just behind Beckett Boulevard, north of town. I didn't know if that is in the works or not. I know when you projected out, it projected out to 2031. So I just wasn't sure if you had information on that.
Thank you for the question. So we do own a very large plot of land in that area, so off of Cranberry Road. We are selling that property. However, we are keeping 8 acres for a future school site in the event it becomes required. Our initial thinking, based on the number of students that are projected for the Tilsonburg area, we'd be looking to accommodate through an addition. However, if enrollment yields substantiate to a higher number than initially expected, certainly we want to have that plot of land available for a new school when it's required. I know there's another question here in the chat. I can read that now here. So when you refer to the capacity of each school's building, is that based on current classrooms, or are there any repurposing of rooms, like losing a library to become a classroom? So the capacity of each building that Christopher had alluded to is just the building itself and the classrooms within it. So they would not include repurposing sort of non-instructional spaces into classrooms. So the OTG, or on the ground capacity as we call it, is of the classrooms inside each school. So I hope that's helpful.
Anything else, Brittany? I see your mic is on. Just wanted to make sure we're acknowledging you.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, all good. Thank you.
No, just wanted to make sure we weren't missing you. And I'm sure, just in reference to that last question, people have experienced temporary closure of library spaces and other spaces while we seek to add space or shift things due to enrollment. Those would definitely be temporary. The board always prioritizes non-classroom spaces, including French spaces and other pieces like that. So we will, if necessary, move other accommodations into the area. And as Ben said, we're, depending on the outcome of this and what the projected growth is, open to options like additions and potentially building a school, just depending on where we land. Any further questions of clarification? All right, folks, if there's nothing further, and I'll pause for one more moment, but while I do that, I do want to thank everybody for giving their time this evening and for volunteering to be part of this really important work. It doesn't matter how well as a team we know an area, we don't know it as well as the residents, so we certainly look forward to input from families, community members, and really want to make sure that everybody knows that we are open to creative suggestions and ideas. I've been through several of these myself as a superintendent, and rarely do the suggestions that we bring forward mean the final answer. There's always some really great ideas that rest in the community, so we look forward to working through this with you. And as Ben said through the presentation, if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to email us or use the website, and we're eagerly looking forward to reading your reports. If there are no further questions at this time, I'll thank everybody. I want to thank the staff that are giving their time this evening to meet with us, and thanks to all the community members and staff members out in schools and wherever you may be, and wish you a fantastic night and all the best.